Consultant in Your Pocket brings you what's new in Domino Designer 9. This is hosted by Chris Miller and includes all the content from Kathy Brown and Paul Calhoun. Catch them both at IMLUG 2013.
Welcome to another Consultant in Your Pocket webcast. This one is following up with the one we had last week. This is what's new in IBM Domino Designer 9 with Paul Calhoun and Kathy Brown. For all of you who can probably see the screen now, we put all of these sessions, we record them and put them back online for you to stream. So if you go to consultantinyourpocket.com, you'll be able to find the full listing of all the sessions that we've done now, pretty much across the board. So we have quite a few out there. It goes all the way back almost a couple of years now. So the last one we did was for the admin side of the house. Sponsor for this one is easy enough. We want everyone to come to IMLUG. Both of our presenters today are speakers at IMLUG. If you're unfamiliar with IMLUG still, and we'll probably mention it again later, it is the North American Lotus User Group, the 4th year, and it is free for 2 days of basically deep technical information. It's awesome. Tons of IBM champions, tons of technical presenters from where you've seen them at other conferences, Connect, Lotusphere, and everything else. Registration is still open. It is May 6th and 7th, and this is the Bring Your Boss year because IBM is also at the same time going to have, as a track inside of IMLUG, the Social Business IBM Connect Roadshow. So it's fully sponsored and free for everything for attendance and food. All you need to do is simply register here on the page at imlug.org and get a hotel room quick if you're coming from out of town because they are going quick. We are filling up fast. And as you can see, there's also a listing for sessions. For those of you that are familiar or want to know more about the sessions that are going to be here this year, the agenda will be online the next few days, but the sessions are posted so you can see exactly what will be presented over the 2 days. And then the last piece is the tack-it-ons. There is a optional Wednesday workshop. These are deep dive tech all-day events provided by basically companies that are experts in this industry. They both provided at a discount. There's one from Team Studio for developing mobile apps with X Pages, and then there's one from TLCC with rapid X Pages development using application layout and Dojo UI controls. Long name. Both of them are only $4.95 for the entire day. So that's a huge training discount right there. So from there, I want to introduce our 2 speakers and let this thing get started. If you have any questions, there is a question box on the right-hand side that you should be able to type it in. All of us can see it, so we'll be able to answer you. You also can put things in the chat, but the questions directly, we can then follow up with those either privately or to the group. There is a chat window as well. Someone indicated they couldn't hear, but everyone else seems to be saying they're hearing fine. If you have a problem, let us know. From there, who gets control first? First, we should say hi to Mr. Calhoun. Paul, how are you today?
I am very well. How are you this morning, sir?
I am excellent. And Kathy, are you still there?
I'm still here.
Excellent. We both all have audio. We have one person that's having audio problems. I would suggest if he's having trouble listening, try the audio IP or disconnect the meeting and come back in. It'll let you back in. Either way, you should be fine. Do you want me to run the poll real quick? Give you guys a
why don't you do that?
We have one poll and only one poll for everybody. And we're going to go ahead and launch the poll for everyone. So at this time, everyone should see exactly the poll we'd like to answer really quick. The reason being they just want to get a mindset of who's actually seen it or installed it. We'll give you guys usually about 30, 45 seconds to go ahead and click the one button.
Can I modify the question? It doesn't have to be already upgraded. We were wondering just if you've used it. So, maybe you tested it out somewhere.
Kick the tires.
Yeah.
Kick the tires.
How come I can't participate in the poll?
Because you're a presenter, and you better have Designer 9 running.
I hope the answer is yes, Paul.
Wait a minute. Y'all just keep talking while I install that real quick.
Exactly.
I'll be able to say yes in 2 minutes.
So that the numbers are slowing down slowly. So we'll go ahead and finish up. It's been about a minute. We'll finish it up. We'll close the poll. We'll let everybody see to give an idea of exactly what the numbers are. There you go.
Yeah.
So I presume, like you said, a few people have played with it, but we're talking about a full, upgrade for themselves. But a few people already have, so that's a pretty good indication of the percentage of numbers. Cool. So I'm going to pass control over to them so they can begin the presentation. And for anyone that we have one person saying audio problems. It is recorded, so you'll be able to see this streamed again if you can't hear us right now. So are you two ready to go? Paul, are you getting the controls?
I still have the poll sticking up in front of me.
Because I haven't given you controls yet.
Oh, okay, yeah. Go ahead and pass me the con.
You are now going to be the presenter, which will change the view in just a second. I will close the poll. There you go. And it's all ready for you, sir.
And it should look like that.
It will in just a second as soon as you're sharing.
Oh, do you want me to share? Main screen. Oh, I see.
There you go.
How this works. Look, I am technologically literate. Well, officially, good morning and welcome to the What's New in Domino Designer 9 webinar with myself and Ms. Brown. We're going to just kind of go through some quick introductions real quick. Again, I'm Paul Calhoun. I'm a principal at NetNet Solutions Unlimited in Houston, Texas. I've been doing consulting, training, mentoring, speaking for 22 years on Notes, Domino, IBM, Microsoft even for a little while. My primary hobbies here is, if you haven't heard me speak before in the last 12 months, then you haven't been subjected to the 9,300 pictures of my grandkids. So I spend a lot of time with these days, riding motorcycles, speaking at lugs, cooking, certifications in IBM Lotus, Rational, and DB2, admin and developer certified in the last 3 releases. Been working with Notes 9 since the very first beta, and then have been actively developing in it actually since probably November of last year, getting the some production stuff ready. So that's who I am, what I do, and why I'm here. And then I will let Ms. Brown introduce herself.
Yep. Hi, I'm Kathy Brown, consultant at PSC Group. Yes, that is correct. I have about 15 Twitter accounts. A lot of them are shared accounts. They're not all 100% mine, but I am a bit of a Twitter addict. There's my blog, Run, Mom, Geek, and I am most definitely a loud laugher. If you've never met me, if you have, you can hear me from about 30 yards away. And so that's me.
So our goal is to get you all tuned up on the webinar so they can hear you laugh.
Yeah, you want to have that volume button ready to turn it down.
All right. Okay, so that'll be our primary goal. Well, we have some other agendas and goals as well. So our agenda this morning is just to introduce you to what's new in Domino Designer, X Pages, programmability, let the coffee kick in there.
Easy for you
languages.
to say.
Exactly. So we're going to just kind of tag team this. Kathy's going to take a couple things, I'm going to take a couple things, and we're just going to walk you through some of the highlights of what's new in Designer 9 and what you can expect the experience to be there. Obviously, we're not going to be able to cover each and every new enhancement and minutia detail, if you will, but we want to cover the things we think are some of the cool things that are coming, and then we'll point you to the documentation, which is pretty good, and allow you to look at all of those actual details. So, Kathy, this is you.
Yep. And just a quick note, we're not obviously going from order of importance. It's actually kind of loosely follows the what's new document when you go into the help file of Notes 9. So the PNG file support is definitely not the most important thing, although it is a nice thing. So it does now support PNG files. You can see there the little drop down. You can pick PNG and then you can open them up and actually find them without having to do weird manipulations to get them into your applications. They've also added hover help functionality in the X Pages source editor, so you can see that there, as well as content assist help. So just some more stuff pops up for you to see and help you out there.
Yeah, that content assist help from the source is going to be huge for a lot of the folks that have been working in X Pages for a while, because hitting the control space now gives you a list of all of the the tag attributes, and so that's really kind of a cool thing.
Right, especially so, yeah, you're not constantly flipping back to help files and wikis and whatnot.
Right, you go into the property panel in design mode versus source mode, so that's fun. This next one is something I'm particularly excited about, only because I think it's going to, again, lower the barrier for Domino developers to start kicking the tires on Java things. So in the last release, in 8.5.3, we got the Java element, the actual design element that is, under code in Java, and it allowed you to go in and create a Java class, and that was a really, really, really cool thing, because you didn't have to switch over to the Package Explorer view, you didn't have to, go through any kind of a wizard. Now with the Java code element directly under the application navigator, you can simply go in and create a new Java class. So the importing of the jar extends that. That's still one of the big barriers for people that want to implement any third-party jar file. For example, I do a lot of things with Apache Poi, and Poi is just a third-party Java library that allows you to go in and create, manipulate Excel spreadsheets, Word documents, etc. So before we have this new design element in 9, then you had to know where to put this jar so your code could find it. And there were lots of places. You could stick it in the file system. You could go over to the package explorer. You had to know where to go. You had to actually create a folder, a lib folder, and then you needed to import it there. Now you simply go in and you import the jar file here, and then it's available to all of your server-side JavaScript code. And then it's also available to any of your actual Java code. So once that jar is imported, then it's going to be automatically added to what we call the Java build path or the class path. And then you can use that in your SSJS code, Java code design elements, and then any Java code that's in the package explorer view. And again, that's just going to kind of help developers, so that they don't kind of have to, fumble around getting their development environment and then their production environments kind of up and running. And it makes that NSF a self-contained, environment that they can just then deploy. One thing to be aware of is that if you put the jar file, the new jar file in the designer like that, in the NSF, that's not going to make that code available to Java agents or Java web services. So you still have to deploy those jar files in the libext directory like we always have. But for Xpage development and server-side JavaScript development, then it's certainly going to make that particular thing significantly easier. Right? A new thing also is editable field content. This is really more to do with the extension library. So if you already started working with the extension library, which is Upgrade Pack 1 for 853, or the extension library from OpenNTF, in Notes 9, that's another cool thing about 9 is now that the core extension library, pretty much everything except the social enable tools and the JDBC tools are baked in to Notes 9. So they're just always there and available if you want them. And one of the things that's there is additional content types. So when you go in and you could say, like in a computed field or a view column, you could say, I want to display this as text, or I want to display this as HTML. Google search is now one of the default content types that you can put in there. But with the extension library, you could also define your own content type. So what's not really apparent right off the bat is that content type is now an editable field. So you can go in and you can type directly in there. So if you define your own content types, and then those are available as plugins or additional applications, support in the application itself, then you can just put those right in there. This one, support for converters, I'm going to be really honest that this one kept me up for a couple hours. The support for converters is now any editable type has this new Boolean display type. And my first thought for this, and I've been asking people, is when I think of a Boolean, then I always think of true false. And as far as taking that to an actual UI, I'm thinking, okay, well that's a radio button, right? True, false. You go in and you set that up that way. The issue with the new Boolean is that if you turn on strict, then it's only going to accept a value of true or false, which means that in your standard Xpages design interface, your component interfaces for selections like radio buttons or checkboxes or combo boxes, you actually have to program the values that are going to be returned. You can't just take the string values or it's going to actually return a stack trace error. The second gotcha here is that if you set this up, for example, if I set this up as a radio button and I go in and turn on strict and I set my values to return Boolean true or falses, it's also going to throw a stack trace error as soon as you try to save it to the notes document. And the reason for that is, if all of you Domino developers know, that there is no Boolean data type in the notes document fields. So when you go create a field in a standard notes form, if you look at all of your options there, Boolean's not one of them. So if you set this up and you bind it to an actual field in a notes document, then you're going to get a stack trace error at the point in time you submit it. And that's
so what you're saying is I have to convert my string into a Boolean for this to work, and then I have to convert my Boolean into a string to save it?
Yeah, just the second part, yeah. You have to actually take the Boolean and convert it to a string if it's using like a radio button or a checkbox. The weird part is that if it's a standard like edit box field, like what I've got on the screen here, it actually does the string conversion for you before it saves it. But the thing that I'm really kind of confused about all the way around is why they kind of elevated this to the top when it just has some very confusing use cases.
Right.
Its primary use case is it's really good for storing Boolean values, actually Boolean data types, in beans, in Java beans, whether they're managed or just plain old Java objects. So simply be aware of that. That my initial reaction to this was, oh, this will be really cool for radio buttons, but it really doesn't work like you think it's going to work, and that's primarily because you can't natively store Boolean objects in notes documents. So just FYI, be careful there.
Okay, just a few little quick things here. So they've made some memory management improvements, and largely what I got out of this is they've reduced memory leaks that cause Designer to crash, which is a totally awesome thing that we don't actually know and can't tell you the details of, but we're told that it reduces the memory leaks causing Designer to crash. There's also the palette state saving feature, and then actually the item I like the most on this page is the XPages source editor hyperlink navigation functionality, which is a really fancy word phrase for saying that when you hover over something, you can see on the screenshot here. So I'm on an X page, I hovered over my custom control called test, and it popped up this little window, most importantly with the little blue underliney link. So I can just click that link and it'll open up that custom control. I know a lot of times I expect that to happen if I double click on something and I want that element to open, and it doesn't always open, so I have to go over to the the outline control or whatever, and that doesn't always open it. And so now they've got this nice little blue link. I hover over it, I click the link, it opens that element, and now I can edit that element. So I'm a fan of that.
Cool.
Also a fan of the close application functionality. So in your left-hand navigation, you can right-click on an application and say close the application, and it closes all of the tabs that are open for that. So say you've got 20 custom controls and 3 X pages open, and you just want to close them all at once. It'll close them, and it'll prompt to save them, and that won't close everything. So say you had, for whatever reason, 3 applications open at once, you can just close that one. And prompts to save them, which is a nice part. Also, I'm a huge, huge fan of working sets. I hope you guys are using them. I find them so useful, absolutely love them, and I use them all the time. But what happens is sometimes you have an application, it's not in a working set, so you have to resort to that giant, huge list with like 4,000 things in it, and you don't know how to organize and whatnot. So here on the nice opening page, every time you open Designer, it goes and it checks to see if any of your applications are not in a working set. And about part of the way down on the left-hand side there, you see a new link appears called Applications Not in a Working Set, right above None. And that will just open up all of the ones that, oddly enough, aren't in a working set. And then you can organize them and put them into a working set and do whatever you need to do with them. But I love that. I think that's a great feature, and it automatically checks for it every time you open Designer.
Very cool. Alrighty. Some changes to the Domino Designer preferences. It seems like every time we figure out where they've put a particular configuration or switch, and then they upgrade, then they move all the preferences around. So it's kind of like a hide and seek to figure out where things are. So now under preferences, so when you go to File Preferences, under Domino Designer, now the XPages and Extension Library palette are their own little subsections, if you will. So if you're going to go in and the things that were normally under the Domino Designer, for the X pages section, now it has its own little subsection there. So this is just where they put things. Be aware that you're looking for that. I'm a huge fan, and a lot of people don't know about this little preferences box. In the upper left-hand corner, you can actually type into that field, and it's a filter. So I've gotten to the point now where I just start searching for things. And initially when I did it, I thought that it only found things in the left-hand navigator. For example, if I was looking for X pages, I would type in X pages. But it'll also find text that is in the actual grayed area on the right-hand side. So if I didn't know where show bubble help on data panels is. You can actually type in bubble, and it's going to take you to this particular page. So you can type in font, and it's going to take you to the set your fonts. I don't ever remember where that preference is. So taking advantage of that little filter box on top is really, really nice. Speaking of some new things there, bubble help preferences, hover help preferences, they're moved down in there, and there's new checkboxes for associated timers for that hover help, depending upon kind of the speed of your PC there. Okay. Some designer usability improvements, primarily with the extension library. So we've got some new pickers from the all properties view. So new specialized pickers have been added there. So that you can go in and rather than knowing, having kind of know what they are, is now you can just say, okay, well, this is a currency or form or regular expression, in the application properties itself. And again, that's primarily for the stuff that you're coding inside the extension library that's now all baked into the designer with that goodness. We've also got some application navigator changes and additions, and that is in the application navigator itself. We used to have just like application properties, and then application properties had the 6 tabs going across the bottom, and you had to go and find where those things are. And now they've actually pulled out on the application properties, and I don't think they really labeled this too good. You have your standard application properties, which is all the notes and domino stuff. And instead of calling it X pages, they called it XSP properties, which in reality is all of your X page configuration options. And then lastly, they put in the faces config. And you need to be aware about the faces config file. That gives you direct access to the XML faces config file, but it's only available in the X pages perspective. So if you're going down through the Navigator and you're not seeing that, that's because that's the one that's in the X pages perspective only. So XSP properties is where they've moved all of the X page configuration goodness. And we'll come back to some of these specifically in just a little bit. One thing I want to point out here, though, that's kind of nice, the XSP properties has always been another one of those kind of black box configuration files where if there wasn't an actual checkbox or radio button in the configuration interface, you would find a tech note, or you would see someone blog about going to the XSP properties file and adding a particular configuration value. And that's another one of those things where you had to go to the program navigator, and you had to go down through the folder structure, and you had to find this XSP.properties file and then go make those changes. Now you can just click on source, and it opens up the XSP property editor right there inside of Designer. So you can actually see what properties have been set. It's kind of nice because we have general, persistence, page generation. If you go to source, you can see anything that's been set besides what the defaults are. So again, that's kind of a nice way to go in and see that. And finally, faces config, again, is just they've added that to the X pages perspective. If you're doing anything with specifically managed beans, so if you're not familiar with faces config, if you haven't been doing any Java or managed bean development, then you might not have even known that this file was available in there. But this is one of the things that it's for. Is a place that we go in and we set up the managed part of managed beans for adding managed beans to our configuration to provide them a name and a scope, and then being able to call them specifically from EL expressions. So we're kind of hoping now that they've lifted this up and kind of highlighted it over there in the application navigator that this again is going to lower the barrier to entry for developers to get in and start using managed beans, being more comfortable setting the configuration of those things, because it's right there as a design element, and not something that they have to go fumble around for and type stuff into. Domino Designer here again, data source configurations. We now again, primarily with the addition of the extension library, have additional object data source, and you can also go in and via plugins you can define your own data sources. And so now those are going to be available when you go in and you create a data source for an X page or a panel, or the extension library components that actually take data sources. You'll be able to contribute here and see what these things are. But right off the bat, you're going to see this new object to data source, and you can go in and you can configure that so you know what that is. Back to you, Ms. Brown. Kathy?
She's probably on mute.
Hello? Hello?
Well, while she's figuring out the mute button real quick, we will remind everybody you can put questions into the questions panel. All of us can see those, so we can answer those for you, get them back to you. Well, I won't personally answer half of them as well. And is Kathy back yet first? If not, I was going to.
I said some really brilliant stuff on mute.
There you go. Now that she's back from mute, we will remind everybody that both of them are also going to be at IMLUG for those that join late, imlug.org. So both of these presenters have sessions there. So Kathy, now that you're back with the audio.
Yeah, I can't accidentally hit mute when I present in person. It's much better.
Perfect. All right, back to you.
Oh, so anyway, yeah, so if you were using 853 Upgrade Pack 1, you may see this and go, this isn't new, but it actually is because it's actually part of the official release in Release 9. So now we've got the extension library and all the lovely little goodies there. The list was so long, it burst up over the top of the page, and that's not even the full list. Some great things in there like application layout, which I'll get into a little bit more in a second. Data view, tooltips, all kinds of great stuff in there, and now all a part of the official release, which is good. I know there's some of you out there that you can only use items that are fully, officially, truly, really awesomely supported, and now the extension library is included in that. Next slide. So the application layout, this is one of the items in the extension library. I like the extension layout a lot. It makes a lot of stuff really easy and configurable, and you don't have to really think about how to do it. If you haven't used it yet, it uses One UI, and it provides all of the things that kind of give you that One UI look and functionality. So we've got the banner bar across the top where you can put the logo. You've got the title bar and the place bar where things go like your login and log out node and like the welcome user item in the top there. The title of the application, whatever you want to put up in that place bar, so you can have those buttons across the top and tabs across the top. And then you've got the drop targets, as they're called, with a left column, a middle column, and a right column. Should you want to use them, you of course don't have to, but it makes them easy to use and they're right there for you. And you can drop in controls and or leave them open so you can change it on the page that you use it on. And then the footer links and legal text and whatever else you want to. There's a lot of goodies in there. It's all built in. It's really nice. Again, you don't have to think about, okay, I've got to create a banner at the top and how am I going to do that and all that stuff. It's all right there for you in the application layout. Sort of application in a box, just add water kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm a big proponent of this. I mean, in the community, I think there's a lot of folks, it seems like they're very polarized. They're either, oh, it's really cool, or no, I would never use it kind of thing. But it's definitely my first, when I'm talking to people about converting client applications to XPages applications and they haven't really done a lot of web stuff yet, then this is, like you said, it takes care of all of the look and feel kind of questions and where you're going to put stuff, and then it just allows you to concentrate on the content that you're going to put in that middle section. So,
right.
Yeah.
And the nice thing about it, because it's set and it's there and you can reuse it on all your pages, so you're going to at least be consistent throughout your application, but also because it's One UI and the way it's set up, if your users are used to like connections or any of those other things, they're already sort of familiar with where stuff will be and how it will look, and this kind of mimics that, which is nice because then people aren't fumbling around looking for stuff. Yes, if you're a huge roll your own proponent, no, you're probably not going to use this, but that's okay.
Exactly.
So more stuff in the extension library, which didn't fit on the list on the other page. Some iNotes controls and the mobile application controls, and I'm not sure why I only listed out single page application, but that's okay. Basically, the reason I have notes at 9 on a slide here is hopefully sometime soon there should be a notes in 9 presented by, me on on the mobile controls from the extension library. So basically how to use all of these little controls in here and create a simple application. So there you go. So that's now, again, in the extension library, which is included in Designer 9.
Yeah, and that's another one of those, just because they've baked it in, and the mobile part, I think is going to, again, lower the barrier to entry for people to start kicking the tires on the mobile design.
Exactly. Oh, sorry, I was just going to say, yeah, these mobile controls, if you're like a hardcore, really complicated, I want to do this, this, and this, and it's got to do this, and all these things, you might not want to use these. If you've never done any mobile development before and you want to just, jump in there and have a quick start, these are the way to go. You can,
I tell people
get in there with
the
the single page application, start throwing stuff on the page, and you've got a view, you click an item, it opens a document, works great.
Yeah, it's probably the lowest barrier to entry, I think, for Domino developers to start embracing and jumping on kind of that mobile bandwagon.
Yep, and it automatically themes for iOS and Android as well.
Right. Yeah, another huge benefit that you don't have to worry about the look and feel. You just worry about the content.
Right.
Yeah, sweet. The next one, so we're going to jump back into the XPages property editor and talk about some of the new properties that are there. Some of them are actual new, and some of them are just XSP properties that were configurable before, but you had to go to the text version or the source of the XSP properties file to put in. So now when you go to the XSP properties, you've got a couple things, like we were just talking about mobile. So the very first one there is, if you wanted to use the mobile theme, you had to basically go in and set an XSP property for what the prefix of the XPages that were using mobile were. So if you had one XPage application that had your traditional or core XPage definitions and design elements, and then you wanted to include mobile in the same NSF container, well, then you could prefix those with something. It doesn't have to be M underscore, but that's kind of become the de facto standard. You could have put in mobile underscore, whatever you named your pages. And then if you click this box now, it's going to automatically put that entry in, and then the gray box becomes editable, and then you can go in and you can set what you want that prefix to be. And then when you create your single XPage application, then just make sure that you prefix again with whatever that is, and it's going to automatically add the mobile themes. And again, that's kind of a really, really cool thing. Down under timeouts, we now have refresh entire application when design changes. So therefore, it's going to go in and basically restart the entire application on a design change that gets pushed up. Minimum supported release was an option that was there before, and if you'd never really set that, that's kind of the best thing for minimum supported release. But now that we have 8.5.3 and 9.0, and I know that I've pretty much upgraded. I work inside of virtual machines all the time, but I'm still supporting a lot of clients and customers that use an 8.5.3 code base. So when I'm working in Designer 9, one of the things that I want to ensure is that I'm not using any 9.0 capabilities in the 8.5.3 code stream. So this is a great option where I can just go in and set my minimum supported release to 8.5.3, and then I know that if my XPages are using anything 9.0 specific, it's going to flag those and it's going to tell me. And then use the 8.5.0 style and style class property as a checkbox that you can turn on there. Ignore errors for unknown namespace URIs if you're going in and for example creating your own plugins that are coming in from where you've defined the actual namespace. And then Dojo version. This comes up a lot where folks are. It used to be because we were kind of behind the times, especially in 8.5.2 and 8.5.3. We were running like 2 releases behind the current version of Dojo. Now we're actually pretty much caught up that we're using Dojo version 1.8.1, although Dojo 9 is imminent. The confusing part here is what you can put into this. For example, if you don't put anything here, it defaults to Dojo version 1.8.1. And so that would be the one that automatically gets loaded on all of your pages. But what else could you put in there? Well, 8.5.2, or not 8.5.2, but version 1.5.2 is also installed at the directory level. So if you go into your Data Domino JS folder, you're going to see that Dojo 1.5.2 is also there. So if you put Dojo version 1.5.2 in that field, then now all of your X pages are using Dojo version 1.5.2. Now, those are the only two versions of Dojo that are actually installed with 9.0. But you could, for example, I've found several things that are different in 1.8 than they were in, for example, 1.6, which we had in 8.5.3, and then there's a version that we didn't ever have, which was 1.7. And if there's things that you need to kind of revert back to, you can still go and install a backwards compatibility version, if you will. You can go back and, for example, download Dojo 1.6 or Dojo 1.7, and you can put that inside of the Domino JS folder on your servers and your designer environments, and then you can put that Dojo version in. Now, that doesn't come without, there be dragons, if you will, because a lot of the things, especially the client XSP properties or the client XSP library that IBM included, some of that is specific to later versions of Dojo. So, for example, if you put in 1.5.2 there, then you're going to find that when you load up an X page, you get all kinds of errors in Firebug because the XSP property file or the XSP client-side library that it's loading, is kind of dependent on some syntax that's not supported in 1.5.2. So be aware that you can do that, but just again, kind of be careful with that. And the other thing is you're like, okay, well, I want to use Dojo version 1.7.3. And if you put that in there, but 1.7.3 is not installed, then your pages just blow up because it can't find that particular library. So just kind of a recap. 9 comes with 1.8.1 and 1.5.2. You don't have to put anything in there if you want to use version 1.8. If you want to revert back to an older version, you can put in 1.5.2, or if you install an older version from the Dojo Toolkit site, then you can revert back to those. Next, we have in the persistence tab some cool things. Maximum pages on disk is now one of these where we can go in and define the number of pages that we're going to keep to disk. Save to memory instead when less than X bytes is configurable now. Again, a lot of these are XSP properties that were available to us before just through the standard text file, but again, they've elevated these up, especially with performance being a particular issue. One thing that wasn't available that's new in 9.0 is these temporary locations. So again, for servers that have SANs and different drive arrays, we can go in and we can now define where we want the temporary location for attachments, upload, and pages to actually be. We can stick that outside of, for example, the notes data directory. So a lot of times we talk about putting log files and things on a separate partition. Now we have that capability to configure those things going in. And there's actually a server XSP properties file that you can actually do this globally. You just talk to your admins about setting that up. Another cool thing that is available in 8.5.3, we got the Run Optimized JavaScript and CSS resources. And what that did was compress all of our JavaScript libraries and cascading style sheets into one download instead of 18 downloads. Now, one of the problems that was there, and that just kind of made the problem worse, is if you were actually trying to do any type of client-side debugging in Firefox or the Chrome tools, or even heaven forbid the IE developer tools, then you couldn't go down into these libraries to see what they are, the cascading style sheets. And then even if you did, then because they were compressed, even if you didn't have, use the runtime option was on, then they were compressed. And so you would have, you got an error in, line 1542, but it was one line. You can now actually use the uncompressed resource files, and let me be very, very clear that this is only something, this is one of those things that you would only want to turn on during development. And then that's just going to enhance your debugging, your client-side debugging. When you're in Firebug and you're going and doing things. That's going to allow you to then go in and kind of use Firebug to inspect the CSS, inspect the different dojo to find exactly where the error is being thrown, to just give you more information when you're doing debugging. Okay. Next is the generation tab. So we've got lots of options that again were not surfaced before. We now can generate meta tags in the header, force content type to XHTML and XML, page redirect mode, which is going to be the one that determines what your URL is. So if by default it's turned on. So you'll see that if you get in and you see these new options that are automatically enabled, that's basically how they were all the time. So page redirect mode just simply says that when you go to load an application and you say load the NSF and you've got it set to load a particular X page, then you're not going to see that X page. You're just going to see the URL of the NSF. So if you turn that off, then you're actually going to see all of the content up in the URL. Allows 0 rows and repeat controls is really cool. If you have a repeat control that's being driven, for example, by a categorized view or a view that is based upon the author readers fields for the currently authenticated user, and it's not returning any elements. So now you can actually go in and say, allow no results back in the repeat control. Active content filtering was one of those options that was available to us via the standard XSP property file that, again, they've just surfaced. And this is about going in and inside of specifically rich text fields to circumvent that whole server-side scripting vulnerability, so that you can go in and disable the ability for them to put in anything other than text. It'll strip out all HTML tags if you want, and again, that's completely configurable. Okay.
I'm going to interrupt you for a second. Oh, actually, it's my turn anyway. I'm going to interrupt myself. There's a few questions in the questions box there, Paul. I'm actually going to answer a couple of them myself, but so someone asked if the application layout is kind of like a preformed frame set. So the answer is yes-ish. In other words, like I like to think of a framework, I guess is more the word I would think of it as. So like a framework, it's not like a bootstrap, which is very, very flexible and you can do all kinds of crazy stuff with it, but it is a framework in that it's sort of prefab and it's there for you and you could use it. So it's not super flexible, but it's already done. You don't have to put it together. It's there. You just need to configure it. If that hopefully answers that question. Somebody else asked, is Domino 9 required on the servers before we can take advantage? So it depends on what feature you're looking at. If you're looking at designer preferences, that will be there if you've got the designer client on 9. If you want the extension library stuff to run in your application, then your server will need to be on 9 as well. So it all depends sort of on the feature itself. And then, Paul, do you want me to just ask you these questions, or?
Yeah, I don't know why I can't, with Keynote running, I can't get to the questions view. So yeah, throw them out there.
Paul mentioned JDBC components are not part of the release. Still a bolt-on / update site addition from OpenNTF?
Yes. Yes, so the open social tooling and the JDBC components of the extension library are specifically the two primary things that didn't make it from the OpenNTF version of the extension library into the original update pack 1 for 853, which is also the basis for what's included in 9.0. So they're targeting this latter half of this year for including those in both the 853 as well as the 9.0 extension library capabilities, but right now they're still bolt-ons. You would have to actually be using the extension library from OpenNTF, and there's several people that have blogged about how you can use that. Even you can still use the extension library on 9.0. You just basically have to not be using the included extension library components.
Okay. And Symfony integrated container is no longer available in Notes 9 install. I'm working on a composite application involving Symfony spreadsheet and the host on demand container. Thoughts? Don't do that.
Cricket.
Yeah, I mean,
well,
Symfony
there's two
yeah,
warning signs in there. Symfony 1 and composite application 2. The composite application, and I guess that's probably one of the primary use cases that they just mentioned was, for integrating Symfony stuff down there. I never really did anything with Symfony. The tooling that I use anytime I have to create any kind of spreadsheet, I mentioned at the beginning, is using Apache Poi. And then, that's a Java library that allows you to create, manipulate, spreadsheets. It's an API that I already knew, so I didn't have to really when they came out with Symfony and the Symfony integrated stuff, that's just something from a designer point of view that I would look right now at possibly re-architecting, just because you don't know what's going to happen with Symfony and OpenOffice. You've already seen that they've dropped the integration piece. So it may be that you want to actually look at re-architecting that with a different library.
okay. And then someone's asking, what is the masthead in the application layout used for? And I'll be honest and say I don't know. I've used the application layout control many, many, many times, and I've not ever put anything in the masthead before.
I can't remember if I used it or not, but I think it's just the masthead is an additional facet area for content that's always displayed at the top of the page.
Right. Yeah. I
That's
generally
typically what your masthead is like your logo and
yeah. I mean, I usually use the banner myself. So like that's where my logo goes and things like that. But
yeah, but the masthead I think is again just an additional facet area where they can put additional static content.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Those are all the questions for now. So back to the slides. So 9 also comes with updated application templates. So the discussion and the team rooms are X-pagified.
Is that a word? Did you just coin a new word?
I don't think I coined it, but
We're gonna give you credit
we can
for
say I coined it. Why not?
There you go.
But so useful. If you can have an out-of-the-box X-page template for use that you can use, but also one that you can look at as a designer sometimes to see what they've used and how they've used the controls. And then the dynamic content control, which will allow you to have multiple facets on a page. You can have a default facet, and you can hide and display parts of the page. And what this means, sort of to me, and Paul, you might disagree, but a lot of times people are talking about the debate between the single-page application and the not single-page application. But like in the mobile controls, there's the single-page application in which you have one X page, and you have multiple facets that get surfaced to the user depending on what they're doing and what they click on and what the workflow is or whatever on the page. So it's all loaded at once, so it can not necessarily is, but can be faster if you're just hiding and displaying and showing and putting up different facets to the user rather than flipping them to new pages that have to reload the entire page. So that's the dynamic content control.
Cool. Yeah, and using the extension library for the dynamic content control and the other one that's out there, which is the dynamic view control.
Yes.
Again, I like both of those a lot for when we're doing standard notes application conversion. So that's really cool. The next one is finally, this is one of those things that since X pages became available that we just as developers, I think we kind of scratched our heads and said, why do we have to bake this ourselves? Why do we have to keep adding the send mail functionality in? So finally in 9.0 they've actually added this. So you can actually go in now. It is a server-side JavaScript simple action. You can go in and set to send a mail. It's under the basic category, the action send mail. It has all of the primary things you would need to send an email message that would simply then go out via the server's SMTP task. The thing to point out here, although I've hard-coded all this stuff in, is if you look to the right of all of the fields, you're going to see that little gray diamond. A friend of mine, Russ Meyer, calls out the Lucky Charm diamond there. That means each of those fields are computable, which means that you can, instead of hard-coding them, you would, for example, be able to actually go in and read values from the X page.
Do as I say, not as I demo.
Right. So you're looking at this and going, well, this seems like a really specific email from Paul to Kathy. What are the application? What's the use case for that? Well, I'd like to send Kathy email, but right. You definitely want those things configurable. So you're not going to hard code these. You're going to compute those. More than likely, you're going to compute them from values that were input to the X page. So, for example, people could input information into the X page. They could then go in. You could have lookup boxes to the address book. Then they could click. This is the on-click action of a button. So then they could simply go in and send mail from your X page application directly. And it's not that we couldn't do this before. It's just that we had to use the API, the Notes Domino API via SSJS to roll our own. And now there's just a consistent way to do this. And you have the standard delivery options, and now with Notes 9, you have some additional embedded experience capabilities, so you can embed this email directly from the application. So when they get it in their mail box in Notes 9 using the embedded experience, that then they could see your application capability too. So again, that's kind of one of those brave new things that we're going to look into.
Also, we got an answer on the masthead.
Yep.
The masthead is available in the Notes 9 client as part of the IBM social theme. So apparently I'm antisocial, which is why I didn't know that.
Because you didn't use mastheads?
Right. Exactly. So
well,
it's part of being social. There you go.
Okay. You put all your social content in your masthead.
Sure.
Okay. So this next one, server-side JavaScript debugger, this is another one in the finally category. As we've been asking for this since 8.5.0 was in beta. How do we debug server-side JavaScript? And I'm not going to spend a lot of time here, but I'll just tell you that we mentioned Notes 9 a couple times. That very, very soon Kathy Brown will be a contributor there. You can look forward to that show. But there's lots of folks
officially I've already contributed. It's just not published.
Not published. You're just waiting to be published, right? You've submitted.
That's a big difference.
You're not published. Yeah.
I've done the work.
Very soon, Kathy will be published, Notes 9 contributor. The one that's already out there, I think it was 2 shows ago. Frederick Norling put up one on, specifically just walking you through the configuration of the server-side JavaScript debugger. And in a nutshell, it's not really that hard to set up. You can do it on your local designer client, do it through local preview, or you can also set it up on a server. Frederick mentions in his video, and I will go ahead and confirm that this doesn't really, unfortunately, have a lot of benefit when you're doing it on the server because it's going to be port-based, and only one designer can be attached to that port at a time. And you can only configure one port at a time. So that means if both me and Kathy were working on the same X-Page application or even different X-Page applications on a development server, and Kathy had started up the debug process from her designer client, then now that port is in use, and I cannot connect to the development server to do debugging. And that's just kind of the way that it's designed. So definitely local debugging has a lot more benefit than trying to do dual development on a server. So and it does support the whole local development, replicate to the development server kind of interface that we're typically used to. But you simply go into the debug configuration. You've got to make sure, and it's a little bit confusing too because the I&I variables that you have to add say Java enable debug, not JavaScript, which simply means that we've had Java debugging capabilities in the local designer client and on the server for a while now. and they're basically piggybacking on top of that same capability using server-side JavaScript as well as Java. So that's why all of the settings are the same. So if you've already configured for Java debugging, the good news is you're already configured then for JavaScript debugging. So you go in, you put in the local host or the host name, you put in the port name, and then you start up your debug, and then you run your particular code. Preview the X page. So add the notes INI variables, create your debug config, set your breakpoints, preview the X page, and then it's just like your Lotus script debugger where you can actually now then walk down through the code. And again, Frederick Norling at Notes and 9 does a really good job of walking you through and setting up that capability. One gotcha for the server-side debugging, again, that's with that port, I've heard several people tell me that they've had problems with this, is that for example, they debug and then they go back, and what you need to remember is that you're basically connected to that port, even if you're doing it locally. And if you try to restart the HTTP task, for example, it'll hang, and then you have to end up restarting your whole designer client. Once you've connected, in the debug perspective, there's a disconnect. So you need to remember that if you're connecting to do debugging, that unless you're going to be in a lot of debugging session time right there, to remember to disconnect from that port, so that when you go to shut down the HTTP task or maybe restart the HTTP task, everything works the way that it's supposed to there. I'll be honest with the Domino data services. I know a lot of folks out there that are really, really hip on using the REST APIs. And this probably just demonstrates how old I am. I did a lot more with web services. So, we had web services, we coded web services that worked. So when the whole REST API thing came out, I kicked the tires on it, and it had two, in my opinion, it just had two drawbacks. One, when you configured a REST service, whatever it was, there was no way to advertise, if you will, what the API was. I mean, it was very proprietary. So we didn't have, for example, in web services, we have WSDL files that define the service. And with REST services, there is no corresponding API definition. If someone wants to use your REST service, you really have to provide them all of the method names and then the specific inputs to those particular methods. And the second one is that it used JSON a lot. And again, just communicating how old I am, I started with XML. So I'm a lot more familiar and a lot more comfortable using XML as my data construct versus JSON. Although definitely in the last 12 to 18 months, I've seen kind of the writing on the wall that JSON is definitely becoming the kind of a replacement for XML, especially for data payloads. So working with JSON, that's definitely something that's not been on your radar, needs to be.
So does that mean if I'm familiar and comfortable with JSON that I'm young?
As a matter of fact, yeah. It means you're significantly younger than me.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, that's really not saying much, is it?
Oh, no, it's probably saying a lot, as a matter of fact. So the REST services are out there. Again, they were exposed primarily through the extension library, that the extension library implemented a lot of these REST data services. The thing you need to be aware of from a development or a designer point of view is that you can't just start using the data services. There's actually a server configuration piece that goes along with it. So you have to actually enable the server to use the data services so that it can basically then go in and listen for these HTTPS requests that are the full create, read, update, delete options that come in. In the competition for world's largest URLs, IBM has put the documentation at the URL you see on your screen there. That's there. That's also a link that's off of the resources that we have at the end, plus it's also in the documentation itself. The wiki, I was never a huge fan of the wikis when they first came out, but I have to honestly say that they've gotten 1,000% better. And this particular one is definitely one of those that falls into the, they did a really good job category, if you will. So the content there that walks you through using the data services, if you're just not familiar with those, then definitely you should take a look at those. Calendaring and scheduling, this is one of those black boxes that we've dealt with since the release 1, in that the calendaring and scheduling APIs and the stuff that happens on the back-end server was just never exposed to developers. That we had, there were some hacks, and if you found out how to, pry open the black box and look inside, you could see some things, but really couldn't really program to the calendar to the degree that we wanted to. So starting with 9, they've actually implemented the Java API exposing the Domino calendar and scheduling functionality. That's going to allow us to go in and some new classes and methods that are there. For example, is session get calendar. We'll be able to read the calendar information. We'll be able to create, and read entries and ranges, so that we now have the ability to work with primarily the iNotes interface calendars, but when we can also then create new entries. We'd be able to see the entries that are out there. We'd be able to aggregate information from different calendars. So it's a complete API. A lot of folks are excited about this, so that we can go in and, again, start surfacing some of this information in our application without necessarily having to go to a full-blown calendar. So that's definitely worth checking out there. And then just some other enhancements, some things that are out there: runtime language support, languages in the restricted support language groups 1, 2, and 3. I'll be honest, I don't know what those are, except I'm pretty sure English is in group 1. So we have English supported pretty much across the board. 2 and 3. Template language support, as Kathy mentioned, the discussion team room templates are English only. Launch option to run server-based XPages applications is new. That actually was some I variables that they introduced in 8.5.3 on both the server and the client, but now you can actually go in and you can set up your Xpink applications to execute on the Domino server. And that's a huge thing for a lot of people that are using Xpink in the Notes client. So they've added, and this is another kind of in the finally category, there's a spell checker in the CK editor on the server and the client.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it's a cool thing. It's kind of, for me, it's kind of a half yay, because I'm a horrible speller. I really rely on spell check to do all of my editing. And in the spell check that they've added to the CK editor, it's not the right click suggest a new spelling. You actually have to click an icon in the toolbar to invoke the spell checker. So it's like, yeah, we're almost there. right halfway there.
Right.
But it's certainly better than anything we've had before, obviously. So, and we can use the one that's built in and native. We don't have to go try to find another one. There's a preference, for example, to turn off auto-indenting in Lotus script. I have no idea what that does, because
I have no idea why that's there now.
Yeah, I don't even. Right, because I can't even remember the last time I wrote Lotus script code.
But all this time, now we're going to let you turn off auto-indenting. And why would I want to turn off auto-indenting? I like auto-indenting.
Right, yeah, I'm just not, yeah, you don't even know.
Anyway.
We covered the highlights, what we thought were the highlights of the things, again, that we think are going to be the cool stuff. There's the complete what's new documentation, again, at the world's longest URL there. You can copy and paste that in. You can also just Google, Notes 9, release notes, or what's new in Notes 9, and you'll get our session, obviously, at top, but then you'll find this. There's the one for Domino data sources. I mentioned Notes in 9. Lots of good content out there. Very soon it will have content from Miss Kathy, and that will be awesome. So, other resources, Kathy, you can think of?
Well, there's our my blog. I'm sure Planet Lotus. IamLug, if you want to come pester us in person, we'll both be there speaking. I was realizing as you were talking about these lovely links that no one's going to want to write down, I'll also post these I'll post these slides on my blog, which is runningnotes.net. So if you want to get that and then hopefully just be able to copy and paste that link instead of remembering it.
We'll also make them bit.ly links, and then we'll put them with the slide replays.
There you go. There's that too.
I'd put it on my website, but my website's currently under
It's lovely. It's just an awesome example of what you can do.
It's not exactly a
X-Pages example.
It's not the best example of my development skills. No. So yeah. So I actually know how to write X-Page applications. I'm not really showcasing it through my website currently. That's maybe this weekend now that y'all have called me out on it.
Right.
So, yeah. So questions.
As the more questions come in, we'll remind everybody this is recorded, so you'll be able to watch the entire playback for sure. Also, a few people, I don't know if they're from the webcast or not, have jumped in and registered for IMLUG. Do not forget about that.
Sweet.
Both of these speakers will be at IMLUG presenting sessions. Tell them what sessions you're doing at IMLUG.
Kathy?
Okay, I'll go first. I'm presenting, I can't speak, but I'm presenting a session with Troy Reimer, who I think is listening on this call, and we are talking about integrating X-Pages with other stuff, other collaborative tools, like, the Team Room and Connections and Smart Cloud. So incorporating those into your X-Page application. I've seen a lot of the opposite direction, right? Putting an embedded X-Page into Connections or whatever, but this will actually be showing surfacing Connections and Team Room and other data into your X-Page application.
Cool.
And then I'm also presenting with Julian Robichaux. We are talking about Domino developer tools. So all of the tools that can help you do your job a lot easier, and the big majority of them are free tools, which is even awesomer. So
and you told me that if I broke Julian's legs, that I could do that session with you, right?
I did not say that. If you chose to do that, then that's your choice. But yeah, so no, Julian
wasn't able to attend because he had broken legs. I would be able to co-present with you then, right?
He could present from a seat.
I was going to say he could probably still present. So I don't know. He's pretty good. He could probably still present.
I don't know. I'm going to have to give him a concussion or something, I guess, now.
What are you presenting while you're down there, Mr. Calhoun?
I'll be down there, and I'll be talking about well, no, I've forgotten what I'm talking about. Which one did you accept?
You're doing the POI, the
POI.
PDF
I didn't know if you did POI or FOP. So, so Apache POI, I'll be talking about using the Java library that we discussed here to create and manipulate specifically Excel spreadsheets. So you'll be able to create, read, update, content from Excel spreadsheets directly from your X-Pages applications.
No, you're doing the FOP.
All right. So never mind what I just said. I'll probably talk about that while I'm there, just because. But yeah, no, the FOP one is actually my favorite one. It allows you to use the Apache FOP library to create PDFs from your Notes Domino content. And again, we do that obviously via X-Pages, but you can do it from agents and standard Notes client stuff. So FOP is just a really cool tool and an alternative to a lot of the expensive PDF generators, and then some that have kind of gone out of license with their funky new licensing thing.
Excellent. So everyone knows that's imlug.org. There are seats still open, not many hotel rooms. We had a bunch of people register today. This will be on consultantinyourpocket.com as a replay. There's also a YouTube playlist where you can catch all of them if you prefer the YouTube format. And then there was one question that was sticking out there. Did you guys answer it? Maybe I missed it. But
which one?
About the Domino 9 required on the servers before you can take advantage of the Designer 9 features?
I answered that, yep.
I didn't see it checked. I was just making sure we covered that one.
I verbally answered it.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So if there's nothing else from everybody, we'll end the webcast about 5 minutes early, which is perfect timing for everyone. You'll be able to catch this, like I said, online in a few days. I want to thank both of you for taking your time out this morning.
Well, thank you for hosting us.
Right. Then tell them where to contact you again. I know you've done it, but where to find you.
Easiest for me is Running Kathy on Twitter.
There you go.
You can get me at PT Calhoun on Twitter, and very soon you'll be able to see the content on my website at www.nnsu.com, Net Solutions Unlimited.
Go look now.
Perfect.
No, not now. Monday.
Thank you.
Do it Monday.
Do it Monday. It'll be perfect for Monday. It'll be ready for IM Live.
Monday would be great.
Thank you, everybody, for attending another Consult in Your Pocket webcast. We will have another one coming up. We've had, oh, by the way, I didn't say that. If you have any requests that you would like to see done, be it administrative, development, business-wise, anything else, send it in to events@consultantinyourpocket.com. We had some requests come last time for things like the new credential store and some more things on Domino 9. But if you have any other requests of things you'd like to see done, send it in, and we will definitely have someone get it on for you and present or create the content from scratch if need be. So talk to everybody a little bit. Thank you, and you guys enjoy your weekend.
Thanks a lot.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.